Heather, thank you so much for joining us on the Teachers Podcast.
My pleasure.
I was really excited when you reached out to us because I'd heard of Reading Rocks, heard such good things about it. I know that you've got a very large following on Twitter, and I thought, let's get you in and let's give some really good content to the teachers all about reading.
No pressure?
No pressure at all. So just on that, some people might be listening that don't know your background or don't know who you are.
Okay.
So could you just give us a background into your journey into teaching and throughout teaching?
Okay, and into Reading Rocks? Or just
teaching?
And
to Reading Rocks as well, yeah. Basically everything you've done in your career.
How I was born.
And that one. Yes.
So when I was a teenager, I actually thought I wanted to be a physio, and then soon realised that that wasn't the right thing for me, and went to Liverpool Hope University. I did a 3-year degree, and then by the end of the second year I was itching to get my own classroom, super eager, and I got my first teaching job at the District C Primary School, which is in St Helens, and I've been there for 15 years.
Wow. Do you know what's really interesting? That I find that a lot of the people that I'm interviewing actually have just stayed in one school. In fact, it's most of the teachers have just been in one school, and I'm wondering whether there's something in that, whether being allowed to stay in the same school and understand where you are and be trusted by the head teacher, to do something new. Maybe that's the future. Maybe that's what we should be doing.
It's interesting because a lot of people, or some people, will look down their nose at people who haven't moved around school, and I get that moving around school will bring you different experiences, but being committed to one place, can bring value as well. And I have been asked why you stayed here so long. And I guess there's a couple of answers really, but two main ones. There's something about that school that got under my skin. I love it. It will always be a part of my heart. And there's a couple of people who've been there a long time, and they say if you cut them, they're like a stick of rock and the district runs right through them. Yeah. So you build that kind of relationship with your school. And I guess another reason was that it is a school that has an area of deprivation around it, and that sense of the job's never complete. So the challenge was always there. There's always something to get your teeth stuck into. And then building on that idea of having a head who trusts you and allows you to try out those new projects.
This is it,
15 years later.
So your journey through teaching then, so you've been at that school. Tell me about Reading Rocks. How did that come about?
So I started the school in year 1, and then slowly but surely worked my way up and into Key Stage 2, and then went off. Oh, before that I was ICT, TLR holder, running that, and then had my mat leave. Chose to go back to school as part-time, and then when I went back as I was part-time, I was losing my TLR. So it was just classroom focused, three days a week. Got back into teaching, child started to sleep. I was kind of itching to do things, and my head was then recognising that I had a bit of creativity and innovation about me, and gave me some TLR projects. That kind of ran into the time of the school was in an RI Ofsted category, unfortunately, which is not the most pleasant of places to be. And the staff that were there really wanted to, move the school forward, believed it could, and a number of us were into reading research and knew that the impact that reading for pleasure can have can move children forward in their futures. So came up with this idea of the year of reading.
I'm just making notes, go on.
Unfortunately, my head teacher, Diane Bate, saw the potential in it and let me run with the project. And it was the best year of my teaching career, and I think it will always be. So it was the academic year 2014 to 15, and the kind of main overarching aim of the project was to drench the children in all things reading.
That's a nice word, isn't it? Drench.
Just literally throw it all at them in all kinds of ways and just hope that somewhere along the children would find their bit of reading that they could attach onto and build this culture across school. So we did all kinds of things. The first thing we started with was the Big Bedtime Read, which nicely is established now and it happens every year at the school. Bearing in mind that parental engagement was a little bit low. School always runs around 50%, 40 to 50% of pupil premium. So our parental engagement wasn't that great. But we put this idea out and we said we're going to do this Big Bedtime Read. Come back in your pyjamas, bring a mug. Local supermarket donated hot chocolate and marshmallows. Thought 30 people will come or what have you. And someone in the office said, do you think we better do a bit of a slip and find out how many people are coming? Okay. And then the replies were coming back and it was like, I think we need some more hot chocolate.
Yes.
And then after school they came in their troves. They came in their troves and we had about 400 people on the school field with big teddy bears, even some parents in their pyjamas, which was a sight.
It was.
Reading around the campfire and just reading.
Did they all read separate stories or did somebody sort of read a big story? Or
there were so we have a campfire area, so we read stories around there that people can join in, and then just lots of books outside and some children. But there was just loads of picnic blankets and chairs, and people were just casually reading. There was no pressure to conform and do anything. So that kind of hit the ground running really, and then the year of reading just had loads just.
Were there any other events that were like really memorable, shall we say, that you did?
Well, I really, really wanted a school dog.
Okay, yeah. Well, we have an office dog, so I can see the draw.
We've met the office dog. He's lovely. They really, really wanted a school dog and thought children reading to the dog, that would be lovely. And I know you can use Pets for Therapy it is, and you can apply for that and they'll bring a dog to school. But it wasn't happening in our area and we couldn't have a dog. So I was kind of thinking, well, what could we do? And we had a local rabbit rescue centre. And I thought, well, let's bring the bunnies in. I have to tell you, I'm allergic to rabbits. But I still pose with my picture with my Peter Rabbit book and my gorgeous bunny. And we did it with Key Stage 1, and the rescue centre brought some beautiful bunnies in, and the children read to them. Book bunnies, we called them, and it was just gorgeous. And it takes off the pressure. That was a nice memory as well.
Just
that
a different thing.
But yeah, all kinds of crazy things and lovely stuff went on. So after the year of reading, throughout the year, I was using social media to kind of shout out about what we were doing, but also to interact with authors, illustrators, and things like that. So I'd previously in the ICT kind of world been in charge of building the school social media platform. So that was there and we were shouting about and people were interested. So we'd gained a lot of interest for our Year of Reading project, which was lovely. And then there was a conversation on Twitter, as they do kind of appear. And there was a wonderful conference. I couldn't tell you who was planning it, which company, it's a while ago. And it sounded amazing. Michael Mulpergo was there, blah-de-blah. But it had a price tag of about £350 for a ticket. Bearing in mind, it was London. So it would have cost to get down there, train, stay over. I was just out of people's reach and people were not grumbling, but just kind of talking and saying, well, do you know what? We need a little bit of that up north. And my friend Les McFarlane, who was a teaching assistant at our school at the time, she now has her own bookshop, which is lovely. So she's still sharing the book love. Yeah. She was reading champion at our school. She said, Heather could do that, and then Twitter was all over it, and suddenly it snowballed into...
And you ended up in the centre of having to do it and
conference at our school, and I learnt lots of lessons, shall we say, about acquiring sponsorship, event management and everything, but it's a fabulous journey, met lots of wonderful people. So we held the first conference at the district, 150 people sell out, squeezed them all in, amazing atmosphere. The staff were just absolutely buzzing, that pride of sharing what they were doing and also in your of their school. Having come from that position of being an RI, to go off and then to be a place where people were asking questions and wondering, how we'd done and what
how
have you.
How can we do that in our school?
So a really lovely journey to go on. So I thought it'd just be a bit of a one-off, and then people were asking for it. So went for it again, 2017. And then people were still asking for it, which is wonderful, because it's great to know that out there's a community of teachers who believe in reading for pleasure, and want to share and support and, talk to each other. So those two were run through school, and then following that, Reading Rocks is now a separate business on its own, which runs lots more up and down the country.
Okay, fantastic. So it's so nice to talk to somebody again who was being allowed to do things in the classroom, and then it's just taken them on to bigger and better things, So Lee Parkinson said the same thing, Simon Hunt said the same thing, and although they have their days in school, still, they've grown something out of their love of teaching, and I just think that's really nice, especially if you've really specialised in an area and you can help people. That's really good. Okay, so I've got some questions from the listeners, basically. So, Heather, I'm going to attempt to pronounce her last name, but I really don't know how to do it. I think it's Kaczmarski, but I probably got it wrong. She can tell me.
Another Heather.
Yeah, another Heather. She says, I've tried lots to engage boys into reading, and even though I've got 16 years of experience, what advice would you give for boy readers age 5 who can't yet see the purpose of why they need to read, or why they need to, sustain their engagement on top of the obvious?
Okay. There's quite a couple of things in there to talk about, isn't there, really? And I think asking what is the obvious might not always be the case, particularly if you are an NQT.
Yeah,
they might not always be the obvious. So I think they're important to be said, aren't they? That, you've just got to read to them, and find your passion for reading and share that with them. If they're 5, young children are brilliant at having an interest, aren't they? And something that they really care about, and it's trying to link into that, really. And then the other aspect of that question is obviously boys. And I have a slight bugbear with kind of not questions, but schools focus on groups, because there's always an analysis, isn't there? And what are we doing for the boys? And my argument is that what you're doing for the boys is exactly what you're doing for the girls. Don't treat them as two separate groups. I think if we polarise them and we make those books for the boys and those books for the girls, we're doing them a disservice. I know that marketing, sometimes we're sold things as that, the blue and the pink. I don't agree with that. I think in books we need to make sure that we're showing books for all of them, and we're including all of them. So the obvious to me would be to do the same for all of them.
I think it's
and engage
interesting
their interest.
That you say that as well, that the teacher has to find their love of reading, because Alison Phillipson was on the podcast a few weeks ago now, and she was talking about writing, and she was saying, are teachers, is the teacher themselves a writer? They need to find their love of writing. They need to be more confident at writing. I guess it's the same thing. And that's why primary teaching's so hard, because you need to find a love of science.
Jack of all trades, Jill of all trades.
Yeah, you just need to be everything, don't you?
Yeah.
And that's what's difficult.
Yeah. And I think you have to relate back to your own experience of reading. And you might not have had the best. You might not be a reader yourself, but reading is just the key to everything in the curriculum. If children cannot read, then they can't access their science, their geography, everything else, and
or their life.
Their life, absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's weaving the books and those experiences into where they do feel comfortable. I think that's really, really important. Yeah. Another project that ran at school, after the year of reading, it was kind of like, well, we're doing reading really well, and then this idea of STEM was appearing. So it's quite well established in secondary schools, and it's kind of trickled into the primary sector now, hasn't it? And kind of, so we looked at, well, can we use our love of reading to get children into STEM? And typically that tends to be the girls that you're trying to push into that. And then can we use our love of STEM to push children into reading? So we tried to do a number of those things to look at using either side to push the children into those. And I guess you have to know your books, don't you? But you also have to know your children. If it's your own child at home, then you do know them, and you can say, well, they love animals, so I'm going to make sure that we've got those. And if you've watched Blue Planet on the telly, you get that out and you have a look at what's there. And I think reducing the pressure. So it's not, we are sitting down to read now and making it a real, it's kind of normalising reading. This is part of what we do. We naturally pick up our phone. How naturally are we picking up the book?
Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. We do naturally pick up our phones. How often are they seen as naturally pick up a book? Yeah, making me think. Okay, so Heather also says, she says, why is the story content in Disney books written so badly? And I think, as soon as I read that, I thought, interesting point, but I see what she's saying, because I love all the Disney films, but as soon as you get the book, I'm like, oh my word, please don't make me read it to you. So she says all the kids want them, but they're just unable to access them. So do you have any favourite starter books?
I really like this question, because kids love Disney, don't they? And Disney do a fantastic job, let's face it.
Of films.
This is the thing, they do a brilliant job of films, and the book is the merch, isn't it? It's the merchandise, and they just want to sell it, so there's not a whole amount of time. So actually the films are excellent quality. And on the way today, we've had our Disney CD on. I have had a 7-year-old in the car with me. The songs are written really well. So I know you've had Mr. P on. I think he's got some stuff on using songs as reading curriculum. So that's brilliant. There's some excellent content in that. But the books, the reason that I would suggest that they're so bad is because they are just treated as merchandise. So what you need to do if you're thinking about starters is flip it on its head. So instead of the film being written first and then you're looking at the books that have come out of the film, you need to look for where the book was written first, and still use that film or that TV programme as an inroad to children. It's familiarity, it's a comfortable area, it's a way of building their interest. But think about it, Harry Potter's obvious, isn't it? But younger children, previous question about age 5, there are several, like our previous children's laureate has got Lauren Child's Charlie and Lola. Then you can read the Charlie and Lola books, and they've already built a familiarity with those characters. They're not frightened, because if you're not the best at reading at school, and you find it tricky, then you've got those barriers to overcome before you get to the book. And you might say, I don't like reading. What you don't like, and what we really have to unpick and help children understand, is it's not that they don't like reading, it's they don't like that horrible feeling of not being able to do something. And I completely get that, because I don't like running. Because I don't like the feeling it gives me when I can't do it. And I think relating it in those kind of ways for them. But actually, if you get to a run and you get to the end of it, and you have that feeling of, wow, all these endorphins. Then
for 10 minutes you think, I might want to do this again tomorrow.
Exactly.
At the end of it.
So what you've got to do for the children is get them to the experience that endorphin. They experience that lovely bit of reading.
Yeah.
And if you can use a book, and there's Claude books, they're brilliant. So I brought a couple of books.
Yeah, okay,
of course.
Show us, yeah.
And I think thinking about starter books when they're younger, this one's a nice example, because there's some publishers are really great at having a picture book, and then you follow the same characters into an illustrated novel. And that's a lovely, lovely way to help children build their confidence.
To transition as well, yeah.
And I don't think I've brought any Claude books with me, but Claude by Alex T. Smith, they do that. There are your picture book that leads into your illustrated novel. And the smile on a child's face when they're like year 2 and they're capable of reading a full novel.
Yeah.
Pure joy.
Yeah. And it's getting them into reading longer stories as well, isn't it? I've not seen those before, so that I like that. I'm thinking already, obviously I'm not in the classroom anymore, but I do have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old.
Oh, I think there's another one that I brought, Johnny Duddle. Sorry, really sorry that you let me loose, but Johnny Duddle's got some stuff on telly now. This is The Pirates Next Door, but he's got Gigantosaurus, and I think Disney have done that. He actually illustrated the 2nd edition of Harry Potter front covers, so you will recognise his work, but he's got some absolutely gorgeous picture books. And then, as in a pile somewhere, he's also got, sorry for moving around, some illustrated novels as well. So it's a lovely way, if you key stage 1, building that confidence, they kind of feel like, I know these characters, I can read them, and then suddenly they're up in their interest.
So you've still got your pictures in, but you've got a longer book to read as well. Thank you. So Lindsay Burke, who actually works for us, she says, can a love of reading be taught? I'm an avid reader, but my children aren't. Although they do love books and read to themselves, they don't read longer books unless I read to them. So how does she get them to read longer books?
Oh, can I go back to the first bit of the question? Can it be taught?
Yes.
I think the answer is no. I don't think you can teach a love of reading, but I absolutely believe that you can nurture a love of reading by modelling it, living it, breathing it, and persevering with it. Learning is not linear, is it?
No.
We'd love it to be.
Yeah.
But it's not. So I think that if you're reading with them and sticking with it, and it will click at different times with different children, won't it? When they can access longer books. But it's finding something that they're willing to persevere with.
Yeah.
Go back to the running analogy. If you persevere with something like that, it's because you want to lose weight or you want to be fit. There's something in it for you.
Yes.
And it's finding that for the children,
they need
isn't
to
it?
find a story that maybe they really relate to or they're interested in.
Yeah.
Or something. I remember as a teenager, I wasn't massively into reading, but some of the books I did get into were ones where they had written. It was a TV series. And then they wrote different stories, and I read them because I liked the TV series and I knew the characters.
Yeah.
I don't know how well they were written, but that wasn't the point. The point was that I knew the characters, and to me, I was watching TV in my head.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cressida Cowell, who's the new children's laureate, says that reading is the film inside your head, and that's why it's better than telly.
Because you can imagine anything that CGI can't do.
And it's your version in your head. It's only you. There's a special relationship between you and the author. Your version of that book is different to somebody else's version of that book. There's a real connection which builds empathy and emotional intelligence and all those lovely other things as well.
So true. Right, I've got loads more questions for you, but I'm just going to do one more on the live and then we can have a short break. So Kath, who also works for us, she says, do you think that reading corners are valuable, and do they actually promote reading? Because Kath, she does work for us, but she also has a class as well. So she says, I used to spend ages creating beautiful reading areas, but I always felt disappointed because the children rarely got to use them due to time constraints, attainment levels, greater challenge and everything. So are they valuable and do they promote reading?
I don't think it's a black and white answer. I think, yes, they can be valuable and yes, they can promote reading, and it depends how you use them. So it can be a controversial question because some people completely say, don't bother with that, it's a waste of time. And then other people say, well, no, actually, the children in my class have responded. So I think to make them valuable, then number one, you've got to make sure that you use them. If the children haven't got the capacity, whether it's your turn in there for quiet reading, or that they can just go in there at different times, that they need to be able to use them. Otherwise, really, what is the point? And the key to it is having great books in there. Yeah. Because if it looks amazing, and then you go in and there's not a great deal to read, then they're not valuable and they're not having an impact. I last year in my school, in each reading area, put in a stash of non-fiction. Some generic stuff, but stuff that related to foundation subjects that were going on in those year groups, so that whilst you were teaching, you could dip in and out and make sure you're showing them how to use it. So it's thinking of ways. Maybe
it's less about the reading corner itself and more about the teacher. The opportunities that the teacher's giving the children, how they are valuing it themselves.
Absolutely.
How much they're actually thinking about the fact it's there.
Yeah. It's how you look after it as well. I always talk about the explicit and the implicit messages around reading. You can put up on your wall a big message that says reading is amazing, reading is for everybody. But then when it's novel time, you go, we're just into this lesson now, we won't do it. Or if you've read the same book year in, year out and you're a bit bored of it and it shows in your voice, all those little things send out that message to the children that doesn't matter what she says up there, that reading rocks, she's not making it rock in this classroom. And I think your reading area can do that. If you've put it up and you've spent lots of time over the summer holidays, and that's your choice, that can be a really strong message to your children. And if you carefully put a book of choice in there each week, Mrs. Wright's Read of the Week or something, that can be really, really valuable. But if you stick it up and it looks a bit shoddy and you don't really look after it, the books never change, then the message is that she's doing it because she's got to.
This is it, why would you? I'm just looking now at the comments. So Lee works with us, says, can you recommend any great picture books for STEM links?
For STEM links? Yes. You need to look at Rosie Revere and that series. They're fantastic, and Izzy Gizmo. They're brilliant. But STEM links, there's just so many, aren't there?
So many of these.
And I think with any book, you can actually get maths links out of them if you think hard enough. One of the books that I've looked at recently is all about whales, and there were so many things in that book. I'll tell you what the title is that afterwards if I can,
that's fine.
I can remember.
Put that in the show notes anyway. That's fine.
But yeah, STEM books. I'll see if I can share some later on if that's okay.
No, that's fine. So Katia, sorry. I teach year 5 and we do shared reading in a class. One book or novel for all. My next cohort is a mixed ability with year 3 children working at year 1-2 reading ability. Do you think reading to them and asking questions about it is the best way to include them?
Yes, but you need to be building up their own fluency and stamina and involvement as well. Fluency is a really important one, isn't it? So it could be that you've read it to them, but then they read it as well. So again, taking away those barriers and building that confidence. There's nothing wrong with over reading and using picture books.
Yes.
So powerful. There's tons of recommendations of picture books that you can use.
Yeah, that just helps them.
But them having a copy of the text and building that familiarity and confidence is really, really important. If you're not signed up, get signed up for Love Reading for Kids.
Oh, yes.
That's the right one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
And they constantly put on new books that are being released. And with 80% of them, there's a download extract button, so you get a PDF.
Yes, I've seen
so
those, yeah.
you know, if you can't afford to buy a copy for everyone in the class, which, you know, not many people
just
can,
do extracts,
then they have got their own copy, and you could have, you know, the real book, or you can put it on the screen. So that's a great way of sharing it.
And also it kind of tells you whether you want to read it or not as well, I guess.
Yeah,
Gives you an idea.
absolutely.
Last one that we'll do then. So Claire Walker says, what's the most important reading skill, and how can this be developed? Putting you on the spot, aren't we?
Yeah. I guess the skill of decoding, you know, it's a bit of a thing, isn't it, that you don't want to bash on about phonics, but you do need solid decoding skills to enable you to get into that rich fruit of comprehension, really. So make sure that you put your biggest and your best in lower down school, and make sure that they can decode as quickly as possible, by whatever scheme and means you use. But for me, running alongside that has to be that enjoyment and that engagement with text. So this is how you do it, guys, but this is why.
Yes.
So you've got the drive at the same time.
To do it, And I think it's just about giving them the skills, isn't it, to actually be able to love it if they really wanted to. Because,
Absolutely.
you know, if you can't do it, then you're just not going to love it ever, are you?
Yeah, and when that gap widens, it gets harder and harder, and the fear factor of engaging with books, it gets there. So the sooner you can get them,
then the better.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So Lindsay also wanted to know, what is the best way to encourage independent reading in the classroom? Is it a designated quiet time, or?
I would suggest that you need to have an established time each day, so that there's a rhythm and a routine to it, where children know what's expected. I've seen different things in different classrooms, some where it's a little rumble of noise where the children are reading, but it's okay to kind of chat to the person next door. And if it's about the books and that's what you encourage, then that's grand. Or you might have a different theme. So I've seen people do non-fiction Friday, so everybody reads their fiction throughout the week at that set designated time where it's calm, but then on a Friday they all pour into non-fiction. I think really it's about giving them the time to do it, making sure it's valued, that it happens for the set time at the time each day, so the children know and expect it and look forward to it. But underpinning that, you've got to make sure that they've got the tools to do it. So, you know, can they read? Have they got the stamina and the fluency and the decoding?
And do you have books?
And do you have great books?
Yes.
Absolutely. And different schools make different choices on that. Some schools have schemes, some have, whether you call it free reader or accelerated reader, whatever you have. The sooner you can allow children to be choosing their own content, I think that the better quality the reading that you're going to get. But it's difficult to invest in great books and have, you know, if you've got a library, brilliant, keep it going and make sure that you do invest in it. And SLTs are absolutely urge you to make sure that it's on your budget. I know that it's really, really difficult times for budgets, isn't it? But I'm going off on tangents, but it makes me sad when you'll see a school say, well, we're doing this PTFA event to raise money for the scheme books, and I think, well, that's all well and good and that's lovely. However, reading is the crux of everything. We said, didn't we? You know, if they can't read, so to me, that is a valuable investment, and it should be on your school budget all of the time. You know, you wouldn't go without your pencils.
No.
So don't go without your books. They're not a luxury that the PTFA can put a nice icing layer on. You know, and tap into your school library services, because if we don't use them, they'll go.
Yeah, and I think
And
they
they
have
can
been
bring-
going across different councils. I'm not quite sure that it's in Calderdale anymore. Just on that then, is there a set time of day you think is maybe best for having this designated reading time?
Well, I would go for 2 designated reading times in your classroom. One where the teacher reads aloud to the children, and then another time. So you might put one in the morning and one in the afternoon. The only kind of advice I would give on that is that if you put it at the end of the day, yes, it's a nice way to finish off the day, but the tendency can be to, oh, well, we're all into this art now, we won't tidy up, and it drops off. Wherever it is, ring fence it, make it sacrosanct, and make sure that it happens, and that's when you'll see the impact from it.
Yeah. And I know that we had this conversation on the phone before, that I actually remember, especially in year 6, I remember having designated reading time. And I think you could jotter as well if you wanted, first thing in the morning when we got in, but also after lunch. And I used to look forward to that because I was watching this film in my head, and it was a book I had chosen. It wasn't a book that the teacher was making us read. And I always just enjoyed those so much more because I'd chosen them myself.
Absolutely.
And I guess you could get to a point, I think there was a rule that you had to at least read the first chapter before you could change it.
Yeah.
And then you were into it or you weren't. And the point is, because you could do that, you were into it. And so I think that's lovely. And I do think sometimes we can be too worried about delivering all the time that we can take out of the curriculum, because we're too worried about, yes, but what are we delivering to them then?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that time
it's not
is
just reading.
Yes.
It makes me sad when people say that kind of phrase, or they're just reading. No, they're not. They're reading.
Yes.
And it's a valuable thing, and
an
they've got to
exciting
practice it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to be good at anything, you've got to practice it, haven't you?
Yeah.
And that's what that time is.
Yeah.
And it's really important that they have it.
Yeah, and in school, because sometimes we can think, oh well, they're not learning anything then, so they can practice at home. But sometimes children don't get time to practice at home, and they do need time to practice in school.
Or they
as
might
well.
not have the right environment. We're talking about making that time and making it, establishing with the children what's expected. Then it's calm and it's quiet. If somebody's engrossed in a book, we don't interrupt them, and we respect the other readers in the room. Sometimes at home, children won't have a quiet space.
No.
Or they might have responsibilities. They might, might have things that they have to do at home. Or the other end of the spectrum, there might be a club every single night and not have any downtime to do it.
Yes.
So it's got to be part of the school day, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and I think making it part of the school day is more likely to be part of their day at home as well, because I think if I could have taken that book home when I was in primary school, because I don't think I could, then I might have been likely to pick it up again, because I want to see
know what happens.
It's just like, before you have children and you have Netflix and you're like, when can I watch that again? Now I just watch it maybe once every month, one episode a month or something. But
it's that feeling though, isn't it, of the best TV show where you're going, what's next?
Yeah, and it's in your pocket. You could just get it, in your bag, you just get it out at any point. Yeah, I really feel like I'm wanting to read again now. I just have to find the time.
I'll leave you some books.
Thank you.
Audio books, maybe that's the way for you.
Well, I listen to a lot of audiobooks because I have time for that, but not actual reading, because as always, kids or the business or something. So Lindsay also said, should children be allowed to select their own reading books, or should the teacher or TA decide which books they should read according to their reading level?
I think there's a fine balance with that, really. We should encourage the children choosing their own, but it's our job to guide them into what is appropriate. And they're not soft children. If they pick it up and they can't, well, first of all, if they can't decode it, they'll tell you, and I can't do that. Or if they can decode it, but the level of comprehension required is too deep, then they won't be getting something from it, and we need to talk to them about what it feels like when a book is right for you.
Yeah.
And then you can allow them to choose. And sometimes they will surprise you. You know, they might be reading certain book band and just plodding along with it, and you think, yeah, this is right for them. You whack something a lot higher in front of them and suddenly they light up.
Yeah.
So it's always worth a shot.
Because they understand the story more, the more engaged in it, because sometimes
it's just got a bit more to it
for them. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So Kath Smith says, whole class versus group guided reading, and why?
I'm laughing at this question.
Fight with yourself.
Because every now and then it comes round on Twitter and Facebook, I'm sure, and I thought, I wonder if I'll get away with this question coming up or not. There isn't a right or wrong, and I think it's about what works best for you and your practice. My personal preference, leave in Key Stage 2, is whole class teaching, and I think you can effectively challenge the children by sharing a great text with the whole class, and you can get round all of the different groups. And I didn't like guided carousel in the sense of, what are they doing? And
I found it so confusing
and bitty and kind of loses flow, and I'm going to say it the right way around, life-work balance was affected for me doing guided, because you're planning 6 lessons when you could just be planning 1 amazing lesson and picking up and feeding back. Reading to me is a special thing all on its own, but it's just teaching. When we're teaching reading, what we kind of given it this special thing because of the literacy strategies, you know, and kind of. But what it's about good pedagogy, isn't it? It's about what does good teaching look like, and you bring that to your reading lesson.
And I think it's remembering that and trusting yourself, and SLT and head teachers trusting the teacher in that as well.
Massively.
Because one of the reasons why I developed the first kind of carousel guided reading pack that we have on the Classroom Secrets website was because I hated carousel guided reading, and I did a lot of supply, and I had to go around, and it was like, oh yes, you're with this group today. I thought, oh my word, I can't manage this in my own classroom. I certainly can't do it in somebody else's. And what's really funny now is that obviously whole class guided reading is a thing, and when it came to developing those resources, I had no problem doing that, because I used to go around and take my comprehension book, and I used to do it hoping nobody would walk in instead of the carousel that they'd left, because I was like, I can't do this. We'll do a whole class thing, and did it that way instead. So I kind of think, we're allowed to do it like that now, but I did it as a secret.
Good.
Anyway, it worked. Okay then. So Sian says, have you got any tips to encourage pupils to read for pleasure at home?
I think we've touched on a number of things, haven't we? I think ultimately you've got to build that want and that desire within the children, so they do choose to pick it up at home. But alongside that, we talked about parental engagement. It is kind of bringing the school community along with it, and making sure that they value it as such. So encouraging your children to use your public library if you've still got your public library. So building links with your school and your community with your library is a really good way of getting the parents on board, and it's a difficult one, but getting them to see the why as well. So I guess it's the same approach of kind of making the parents understand, and your school community the best, so you'll know what will work. If you get your parents in and tell them, snippets of research about the correlation between reading for pleasure and success in later life, that might work for yours. Or maybe the softer approach of bringing the parents in and making them feel comfortable. You've got to know some parents might not be able to read themselves, which is then another barrier for how do you overcome that. And there was a school, I can't remember where it was, but I'm sure they went on an ITV programme and talked about it, where they had their own YouTube channel and they were reading a bedtime story that the school community could all watch at the same time each night. So there are ways and means of kind of bringing parents in. I think valuing when the child comes back in and tells you that they've read, or you ask them with an honest, did you enjoy that? And if you know the book, or what, please tell me tomorrow what happens to that character. Yeah. Those things that don't cost any money, that just cost time and care, can be the most powerful, can't they? So that the child thinks, they love you as their teacher, particularly the younger ones, and they, you're one of the most important adults in their life. And if you say to them, and it can be a quiet little word in the line, and they feel that relationship is there to be valued, they'll come back in and they'll go, fell down the hole, I'll tell you what happened. Yeah, because they think that you're really interested in knowing as well. Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think the why is so important. In fact, Lee Peckover, who did an interview a couple of months ago, he was talking about EYFS, and he was saying that children need to understand why they need to learn to read, and if they don't understand that, then they're not going to want to. And it's the same thing, isn't it? The parents knowing why they learnt to read in the first place and why their children should learn to read, and the children understand themselves why it's an amazing thing, and why it's such a gift as well.
It is indeed.
Thank you. Okay, so do you think then that being allowed to use social media to promote your work with what you were doing in school, do you think that's helped you develop Reading Rocks into something bigger than you ever dreamed it would be?
The very, very simple answer is yes. Reading Rocks, to me, it is a community. Mm-hmm. I think we're on 25 to 26,000 followers on Twitter now, and that community wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the social media platform. Its story began on social media, but its power is that it's national or international. It can bring people together who have the same values or ideas, or different ideas to talk about. Mm-hmm. It's such an amazing tool that we can use it.
Yeah, thank you. So the Reading Rocks, so we've touched on it. You've basically started a company, Reading Rocks. You do conferences. If somebody was interested in going to a conference, what does a conference look like?
Okay, so we do two types of CPD events that people can come along to. So the full day are Saturday CPDs, so either in a school, sometimes they're in a university. We've got two big ones coming up, Reading Rocks South and in Horsham, not far from Brighton. That's the 5th of October. And then we've got Reading Rocks North, which is Northumberland, the 9th of November. Tickets for those are bargain, $22.99, and we feed you.
Ah, wow.
Breakfast and lunch.
Wow, breakfast and lunch.
What an amazing bargain.
Yeah.
So you can find those on Eventbrite. So if you look for Reading Rocks events on Eventbrite, that's where you can get your tickets. And for that, you will get 3 or 4 keynote speakers. We've got some amazing authors and education speakers lined up. And then you'll get a chance to choose 2 workshop slots. So we talked about choice for children a lot, haven't we? I think one of the powers of the Saturday CPD is that teachers are feeling empowered, that they've got their own drive on their own CPD again. They're going to listen to something that they care about and that they think they can put back into their own classroom.
Yeah, because it's on a Saturday and because they can afford it and it's not a stupid price. That means school has to get supply and and they can go with their friends as well.
Yeah, and if you haven't got a friend to go with, we do have lots of people that will shout out and say, I'm coming on my own, and they soon make friends. So the Saturday ones are the big full day events, but due to demand, lots of people were asking, come over here, come here, there and everywhere. So the pop-up happened. So we've got 3 of those coming up again in October. We're doing Manchester, Birmingham and London, and those tickets will be available on Eventbrite as well. They are just $5.99, 5 till 7 o'clock, and you get 2 hours of CPD. So you get one keynote speaker, and then you get a workshop slot. We bring the bookshop, so wallet warning.
Yes. With lots of
and we
fantastic
feed
books.
you. We always feed and water you.
Yeah, which is what teachers mainly want, I think, really, anyway. You know, are the biscuits there? I'm there.
Listen, it is the thing, isn't it? When you go out on training, you always have to text.
What's the food like?
Were the Danishes for breakfast?
Yes.
When you get that evaluation form, it's very, very important.
Yes.
We live on a shoestring at school. A biscuit goes a long way.
Yes, I agree. I feel completely lost about where to go next now.
Yeah, where are the biscuits, by the way?
So we'll make sure that obviously the links to your Eventbrite events are in the show notes if anybody wants to go. So what are your top 5 books to get children engaged in reading?
I'm going to do a really bad answer to this and say there aren't a top 5 books. There are so many amazing children's books. I'm going to tell you my favourite read aloud if that's an acceptable answer. Yeah. I absolutely love Odd Dog Out. Have you read Odd Dog Out?
No.
The Sausage Dog, amazing. It's by Rob Biddulph. He's an author illustrator, and it's about a dog that doesn't fit in, and then he learns that being different is a good thing, and we should all rock to our own beat. And I absolutely love the message. I love reading it out loud, and if you come to a Reading Rocks conference, I always read aloud to everybody. And I've read that a couple of times.
We should have done that. We should have got you reading something.
And I would argue that I read it better than Tom Hardy, who read it as a CBeebies bedtime story.
Oh, did he?
But do check him out reading it, because it's quite a nice watch.
Oh dear. Right, okay, so you know what you've got to do now then. Right, I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions now, so snappy answers. Who is your favourite teacher and why?
Oh, see, I'm rubbish at picking just one out, and I remember loads of great teachers, but all the primary ones are kind of like special memories about. But one standout was Miss Paget, and I think it was year 2, it was definitely infants. And she was just this crazy kind of hippie teacher, and I just remember doing loads of art with her. And that was brilliant. I'm sure she taught me loads of other stuff as well.
But the art is what you remembered.
Yeah, and I remember the head teacher, Mr. Lund, and he was very present, and he knew all of the children by name, and he was there all of the time and engaging with them, and that's what I remember of him. I'm sure the staff at the time had different memories of him, but I remember him being our head teacher and being there for us. So that was...
Yeah. That's good. Hopefully they're listening right now.
Listening
to your shout out. What do you wish you'd known when you first started out in teaching?
I wish somebody, and I think you learn the lesson, but then you still don't live it all of the time, that your list will never be completed.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely okay to drop one of those spinning plates.
It's the same when you run a business.
Really,
the list never ends.
It never ends, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think when you first start, that you really feel like, but I must get all this done, and I can't drop that, and you have to prioritise, and your health and your well-being, your sleep is a priority as well.
Yes, otherwise you're not going to be a very good teacher.
Yeah.
What are the 3 biggest changes that you've seen during your time in education?
Paperwork. I think that if I think back to when I started, we still planned, we still marked, but we didn't feel bogged down by paperwork and bureaucracy, I would say. Pressure from Ofsted, I think that's increased. And hearing people say that they're doing stuff for Ofsted, which is not the right way, the right way around. So that's a sad thing. And maybe a biggest change is that teachers are communicating more via social media as a positive thing. I think sometimes when we talk about change, we always focus on the negative. Don't we?
It was good in the good old days.
In the good old days with our rose tinted glasses.
Yes.
I'm sure there were bad things then, but Yeah, I think that's a change for the positive, that the community has come together, because you can be insular in your classroom, in your primary school, in your own little tight community.
Yeah.
Actually, we're building bridges, which is nice.
That is good. Where do you think education needs to go in the next 10 years? What a question.
It is a really hard question. I've had discussions with people where you think, it can't go on like this any longer. It can't. It's got to implode at some point and start again.
And then it gets worse.
And then it just doesn't seem to be imploding. I would like to see some kind of revolution in the next 10 years where teachers are valued, or the profession is valued more, and the art and the craft of teaching and nurturing our children is valued, so that teachers have more time to do the important things, not the paper filling in things, but the really carefully crafting the curriculum and trusting practitioners who know what they're doing. I would like to see the fear go.
Absolutely. Trusting that teachers want to do the best for the children, that they will do the best for the children as well. Who is your inspiration within education?
Who is my inspiration within education? There are a couple of people who have been inspiring in terms of reading, and I'm going to mention two guys who were involved in the very first Reading Rocks, who are fantastic, and you must follow them on Twitter. So one of them is James Clements, who is a fabulous guy, but he did a project looking at what made schools great about reading, and he wrote a document which you can download on the Oxford University Press site for free, called Building an Outstanding Reading School. And it's just brilliant. Talks common sense, and it's based on proper research. He's been out there and found this out. And he was quite inspiration at the beginning of Reading Rocks in focusing, this can be done. And he came and spoke at the first event. And the other chap was Matt Tobin. And he works at Oxford Brookes University, and he is a legend and master of children's literature. And if I knew as much about it as him, I think I know about as much as him. So, I find people who are passionate as well as knowledgeable about their subject and inspiration.
Good, thank you. And last question then. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I said before, didn't I? I thought I wanted to be a physio at one point. I think when I was little, I think I really wanted singing lessons, and that never panned out. So I could have been, I'm
just trying to think, who's the best singer? I don't know, Leona Lewis did quite well, didn't she? So maybe her.
It was not to be, unfortunately, but I'm still rocking something, so that's okay.
Well, this is it, What's that singing group called? Something rock choir. There you go. Maybe that's where it came
You could have a reading rock. No.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I think we've got through a lot of really good content there. Really content rich, which just makes me really happy as well. Because I want people to go away and be able to implement some of the things in the classroom. So, hopefully you're going to have a sellout tomorrow, the day after the podcast goes live.
Amazing.
Of your Reading Rocks conferences, and they can get you in as well, can't they? To
absolutely. If you go to
have a look at reading in your school,
the website is wherereadingrocks.com, and you can contact on there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.